Karoline Leavitt walked through the heavy wooden doors of the Manhattan District Court. Her black heels clicked against the marble floor as she made her way to courtroom 12. She carried her leather briefcase in one hand and a thick folder of papers in the other. Today was important. She was fighting for Maria Santos, a single mother who was about to lose her home. Maria had lived in her small apartment for 8 years. She paid her rent on time every month. But Preston Development Corporation wanted to kick her out. They claimed she owed money she did not owe. They said she broke rules she never broke. Maria could not afford a fancy lawyer, so she came to Karoline for help. Karoline had been a lawyer for 8 years. She worked hard to get where she was. She studied late into the night during law school. She took on difficult cases that other lawyers would not touch. She fought for people who had no one else to fight for them. She was good at her job and she knew it. The courtroom was packed with people. Some were other lawyers waiting for their cases. Others were people like Maria, worried about losing their homes. News reporters sat in the back rows. They had heard that many tenants were being kicked out unfairly and they wanted to write about it. Judge William Harper entered the courtroom. He was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He had been a judge for 15 years. People said he was smart, but they also said he was mean. He did not like lawyers who questioned him. He especially did not like lawyers who stood up for poor people. Karoline stood up when the judge walked in. She smoothed down her navy blue suit. It was expensive, but she had bought it with her own money. She worked hard for everything she owned. On her wrist was a gold watch that her husband Christopher had given her for their first wedding anniversary. She loved that watch because it reminded her that someone believed in her. Judge Harper sat down and looked around the courtroom. His eyes stopped on Karoline. He noticed her suit and her watch right away. A small smile appeared on his face, but it was not a kind smile. It was the kind of smile people make when they think they know something about you. The court clerk called Maria's case. Karoline walked to the front of the courtroom with her papers. Maria sat in the first row, nervous and scared. She had 3 children at home. If she lost this case, they would all be homeless. Karoline began to speak. She explained that Maria had paid all her rent. She showed the judge bank records and receipts. She proved that Preston Development Corporation was lying about the money Maria supposedly owed. She spoke clearly and calmly, the way good lawyers do. But Judge Harper was not listening to her words. He was looking at her clothes and her jewelry. When Karoline finished talking, he leaned back in his chair and smiled that mean smile again. "Ms. Leavitt," he said in a loud voice so everyone could hear, "I see you have done very well for yourself." He pointed at her suit and her watch. "Very expensive things you are wearing today." Karoline felt her face get hot. She did not understand why the judge was talking about her clothes. This case was about Maria and her home, not about what Karoline was wearing. "Your Honor," she said politely, "I would like to focus on the evidence in this case." But Judge Harper held up his hand to stop her. "Tell me, Ms. Leavitt, how does a young lawyer afford such nice things? Did you marry into money? Must be nice to play dress-up lawyer while your husband pays all the bills." The whole courtroom went quiet. People stopped whispering. The reporters in the back started writing notes. Karoline felt like everyone was staring at her. Her face turned red with anger and embarrassment. She had worked so hard to become a lawyer. She had student loans that took her years to pay off. She had spent countless nights studying cases and writing legal papers. She had won difficult cases in this very courtroom, and now this judge was acting like she was just some rich man's wife playing pretend. "Your Honor," Karoline said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I have been practicing law for 8 years. I earned my law degree through hard work. I have won cases in this courtroom before. My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to represent my client." Judge Harper laughed out loud. It was a mean laugh that made several people in the courtroom look uncomfortable. "Oh, I am sure you have won some cases," he said. "But let's be honest here. You are nothing more than a trophy wife playing lawyer. Your husband probably bought you that law degree too." The reporters were writing furiously now. This was exactly the kind of story they had come to find. A judge insulting a lawyer in open court was news, but they had no idea how big this story would really become. Karoline felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had dealt with difficult judges before. She knew that losing her temper would only hurt Maria's case, so she took a deep breath and tried again. Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows that my client has paid all required rent. Preston Development Corporation has provided no proof of their claims. The law is on our side. But Judge Harper had already made up his mind. He barely looked at the papers Karoline had prepared. He did not listen to the evidence she presented. Instead, he ruled in favor of Preston Development Corporation. He said Maria had to leave her apartment in 30 days. Maria started crying when she heard the decision. Her children would be homeless. 8 years of paying rent on time meant nothing. All of Karoline's hard work meant nothing. The judge had decided the case before it even started. Karoline packed her papers into her briefcase. Her hands were shaking with anger. She had never been so insulted in a courtroom. She had never seen a judge ignore evidence so completely. As she walked toward the door, she heard Judge Harper talking to the lawyer from Preston Development Corporation. They were both smiling and shaking hands like old friends. Something was not right here. Good judges do not ignore evidence. They do not insult lawyers for no reason. They do not smile when poor families lose their homes. Karoline had been in many courtrooms and she had never seen anything like this. As she left the courthouse, Karoline made a decision. She was not going to let this go. Judge Harper had made a big mistake when he chose to humiliate her. He thought she was just a rich man's wife who would go home and forget about what happened. But he was wrong. Very wrong. Karoline Leavitt was about to show Judge Harper exactly what kind of lawyer she really was. Karoline could not sleep that night. She kept thinking about what happened in the courtroom. Judge Harper's mean words played over and over in her mind. But more than that, she could not stop thinking about Maria Santos crying when she lost her home. It was not fair. It was not right. She got out of bed at 2 in the morning and went to her home office. Christopher, her husband, was still sleeping. She turned on her computer and started looking up information about Judge Harper's cases. If something strange was going on, she was going to find out what it was. Karoline spent hours reading court records online. She looked at every case Judge Harper had decided in the past 3 years. What she found made her stomach feel sick. In case after case, Judge Harper ruled against tenants and in favor of big companies, especially one company, Preston Development Corporation. She found 12 different cases where Preston Development wanted to kick people out of their homes. Judge Harper ruled in favor of Preston Development every single time. Even when the tenants had good lawyers and strong evidence, they always lost. Even when Preston Development's lawyers made mistakes or lied, they still won. This was not normal. Good judges sometimes rule for tenants and sometimes rule for companies. They look at the evidence and follow the law. But Judge Harper seemed to always choose the same side. That was very strange. When Christopher woke up at 7 in the morning, he found Karoline still at her computer. She had papers spread all over her desk and empty coffee cups everywhere. Her eyes were red from staring at the screen all night. "Karoline, what are you doing?" he asked. "You look terrible." She showed him what she had found. Christopher was a businessman and he understood numbers and patterns. He looked at her research and his face became serious. "This does not look right," he said. "No judge should rule the same way every time. There has to be a reason." "I think Judge Harper is being paid by Preston Development," Karoline said. "I think he is taking money to rule in their favor." Christopher sat down next to her. "That is a very serious thing to say. If you are right, this is not just about one mean judge. This is about corruption. This is about breaking the law." "I know," Karoline said, "but I have to find out the truth. All those families who lost their homes deserve justice." Christopher looked at his wife. He had married her because she was smart and kind and brave. Now he could see that same bravery in her eyes. "What do you need me to do to help?" Over the next few days, Karoline started calling other lawyers who had cases in front of Judge Harper. Most of them were afraid to talk. They did not want to make trouble with a powerful judge. but a few of them agreed to meet with her. Lisa Martinez was one of the lawyers who would talk. She met Karoline at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Lisa was an older woman who had been practicing law for 20 years. She had gray hair and tired eyes. "I have always thought something was wrong with Judge Harper," Lisa said quietly. "I had 3 cases in front of him last year. Good cases with strong evidence. I should have won at least one of them, but I lost all 3. Did you notice anything strange about him?" Karoline asked. Lisa looked around to make sure no one was listening. "He lives like a rich man. I saw him at a restaurant in Manhattan last month. He was wearing a suit that cost more than I make in a month. He was talking to some business people about his vacation home in the Hamptons." "A vacation home in the Hamptons?" Karoline was surprised. "Those houses cost millions of dollars. How can a judge afford that?" "Exactly," Lisa said. "A judge makes good money, but not that kind of money. I always wondered where he got it." After her meeting with Lisa, Karoline knew she needed professional help. She could not investigate a judge by herself. She needed someone who knew how to find hidden information. She needed a private investigator. A lawyer friend told her about Danny Rodriguez. Danny was a former police officer who now worked as a private investigator. He was good at finding information that people tried to hide. He was also honest and careful, which was important when investigating a judge. Karoline met Danny at his office. It was a small place with 1 desk and 2 chairs. Danny was a short man with dark hair and smart eyes. He listened carefully while Karoline told him everything she had discovered. "This is dangerous work," Danny said when she finished talking. "If Judge Harper really is corrupt, he has powerful friends. They will not want to be exposed. Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yeah, I'm sure," Karoline said. "Too many families have been hurt. Someone has to stop this." Danny nodded. "Okay, but we have to be very careful. We have to follow all the laws. If we do anything illegal, it will ruin the case and probably ruin your career too." "What can you find out?" Karoline asked. "I can look at public records. I can see what property he owns and what he has filed with the government. I can check his financial disclosure forms that judges have to file every year. I can also talk to people who know him and see what they say." Karoline hired Danny that day. She paid him with her own money, not wanting to involve Christopher's business in case things went wrong. Danny got to work right away. 3 days later, Danny called Karoline with his first report. What he found was even worse than she had expected. "Judge Harper owns 3 expensive properties," Danny said over the phone. "His main house is worth $2 million. His vacation home in the Hamptons is worth $3 million. He also owns a condo in Florida worth $1 million. "How much money does a judge make?" Karoline asked. "About $200,000 a year," Danny said. "Even if he saved every penny for 20 years, he could not afford one of those houses, let alone 3. Where is the money coming from?" "That is what I am trying to find out. But I found something else that is very interesting. Judge Harper's financial disclosure forms show some investments that do not make sense. He claims to own stock in companies that I cannot find any record of." "What does that mean?" "It might mean the companies do not really exist. Sometimes people create fake companies to hide money. It is called money laundering." Karoline felt her heart beating faster. This was bigger than she had thought. This was not just about one corrupt judge. This was about a whole system of lies and hidden money. "What do we do next?" she asked. "I need more time to investigate." "But Karoline, you need to be careful. If these people are willing to break the law to make money, they might be willing to do other bad things to protect themselves. You should tell your husband what we found. He should know that you might be in danger." That night, Karoline told Christopher everything Danny had discovered. Her husband listened without saying a word. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Are you going to stop now?" he asked. "No," Karoline said. "I cannot stop. Too many people have been hurt." Christopher took her hand. "Then I will help you any way I can. But promise me you will be careful." "I promise," she said. But deep down, Karoline knew that being careful might not be enough. She was about to take on some very powerful and dangerous people. The woman Judge Harper had called a trophy wife was about to become his worst nightmare. Danny Rodriguez worked day and night for 2 weeks. He followed paper trails and made phone calls. He talked to bank employees and looked at public records. What he found was shocking. Judge Harper was not just taking money from Preston Development Corporation. He was part of a big criminal plan that involved many people. Danny called Karoline to his office to show her what he had discovered. The small office was now covered with papers, photographs, and charts. Danny looked tired but excited. "Sit down," Danny said. "What I am about to show you is going to make you angry." He showed her bank records that proved Judge Harper was getting money from Preston Development. But the money did not come directly from the company. It came through fake companies with names like Atlantic Investment Group and Harbor Consulting Services. "These companies do not really exist," Danny explained. "They are just names on paper. Preston Development sends money to these fake companies. Then the fake companies send the money to Judge Harper. This way it looks like the judge is making money from investments, not from bribes." Karoline looked at the bank statements. Every month for 3 years, Judge Harper had received payments of $25,000. That was $300,000 every year on top of his judge salary. "How much money has he taken?" Karoline asked. "Almost $1 million, Danny said. "And that is just what I can prove so far." But the corruption was much bigger than just Judge Harper taking money. Danny had discovered that other people were involved too. Judge Harper's brother-in-law, Kevin Murphy, was an accountant who helped move the money around. Kevin had created the fake companies and managed the bank accounts. "Kevin Murphy is very smart with numbers," Danny said. "He knows how to hide money, so the government cannot find it. He has been doing this for years, probably for other criminals too." Danny had also found out about Preston Development's plan. The company was not just trying to make money from rent. They wanted to kick out all the poor people from their neighborhoods and build expensive apartments for rich people. This was called gentrification, and it could make them millions of dollars. "Here is how it works," Danny explained. "Preston Development buys old buildings in poor neighborhoods for cheap prices. Then they want to kick out all the tenants so they can fix up the buildings and charge high rent. But the tenants have legal rights. They cannot just be kicked out for no reason. So they go to court," Karoline said. "Right. And that is where Judge Harper comes in. No matter what evidence the tenants have, no matter how good their lawyers are, Judge Harper always rules against them. This way, Preston Development always wins." Karoline felt sick to her stomach. How many families have lost their homes because of this? Danny showed her a list he had made. At least 300 families in the past 3 years. That includes old people, single mothers, and families with small children. All of them lost their homes because of fake court cases. But Danny had found something even worse. The corruption included people who worked at the courthouse. Nancy Foster was a court clerk who had worked there for 10 years. She was supposed to keep court information private, but she was selling secrets to Preston Development. Nancy Foster tells Preston Development about cases before they go to court, Danny said. She gives them copies of legal papers that the tenants' lawyers file. This way, Preston Development always knows what arguments the other side will make. They can prepare better answers and win more cases. Why would she do that? Karoline asked. Money and family, Danny said. Preston Development pays her $5,000 for each case. But more important, her son Bobby Foster got a job at Preston Development, making $80,000 a year. That is much more money than a young man with no college degree usually makes. Karoline was learning that corruption was like a spider web. Each person was connected to others, and they all helped each other break the law. Judge Harper took bribes to rule the wrong way. Kevin Murphy moved the money so no one could trace it. Nancy Foster sold court secrets. Bobby Foster got a fake job as payment for his mother's crimes. Danny had been watching these people for days. He took photographs of Judge Harper meeting with Richard Stone, the head of Preston Development. He had recordings of phone calls where they talked about which cases were coming up and how much money would change hands. I recorded these calls legally, Danny told Karoline. I have a friend who works at the phone company. When people use company phones to commit crimes, the police can get permission to record them. My friend helped me get that permission. The recordings were clear evidence of bribery. In one call, Richard Stone told Judge Harper about a big case coming up. "This one is worth 50 families, Stone said. "If we win, we can kick out 50 families and make $10 million. Can you handle it?" "No problem," Judge Harper replied. "Just make sure my payment is on time this month. I have a vacation house payment due." They laughed together like old friends planning a party, not like criminals destroying people's lives. Danny had also discovered that Preston Development was breaking other laws. They were not paying proper taxes on their profits. They were lying to banks about how much money they made. They were cheating construction workers by not paying them full wages. "This company is rotten from top to bottom," Danny said. "Richard Stone thinks he can do whatever he wants because he has a judge in his pocket. He has been breaking laws for years." Karoline looked at all the evidence Danny had collected. There were bank records, phone recordings, photographs, and witness statements. It was enough to send several people to prison for a long time. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We have enough evidence to go to the FBI," Danny said. "But I think we should get more first. If we are going to take down these people, we need to make sure our case is perfect. They have money and power. They will hire the best lawyers to defend themselves." Karoline agreed. They decided to keep investigating for a few more weeks. Danny would try to get more evidence about the money trail. Karoline would talk to more families who had lost their homes. Over the next week, Karoline met with 12 families who had been kicked out of their homes by Preston Development. Their stories were all the same. They paid their rent on time. They followed all the rules. But Preston Development took them to court anyway with false claims. Judge Harper always ruled against them, even when they had proof that Preston Development was lying. Maria Rodriguez had lived in her apartment for 15 years. She raised 4 children there. When Preston Development bought the building, they immediately tried to kick her out. They claimed she had damaged the apartment, but she had pictures proving the damage was already there when she moved in. Judge Harper ruled against her anyway. "I tried to fight," Maria told Karoline. "But my lawyer said there was no point. Everyone knows Judge Harper always sides with the big companies. Poor people like me do not have a chance in his courtroom." James Wilson was an old man who had lived in the same apartment for 20 years. Preston Development claimed he was too noisy and bothered other tenants. But James was deaf and hardly ever left his apartment. The whole case was obviously false, but Judge Harper kicked him out anyway. "I had to move in with my daughter," James said. "Her apartment is too small for both of us, but I had nowhere else to go. I lost my home because of lies, and there was nothing I could do about it." Every story made Karoline more angry and more determined. These were good people who had done nothing wrong. They lost their homes because a corrupt judge wanted to make money from their suffering. After talking to all these families, Karoline knew she had to act fast. Every day that Judge Harper stayed on the bench, more families would lose their homes. Every day that Preston Development stayed in business, more people would be cheated and hurt. She called Danny with her decision. "We have enough evidence," she said. "It is time to take down Judge Harper and everyone who works with him." "Are you sure?" Danny asked. "Once we start this, there is no going back. These people will fight hard to protect themselves." "I am sure," Karoline said. "They made a big mistake when they chose to hurt innocent families. Now they are going to pay for what they have done." Karoline spent 3 days planning her next move. She had all the evidence she needed to destroy Judge Harper and his corrupt friends, but she wanted to give him one chance to do the right thing. She decided to confront him face to face before going to the FBI. She called Judge Harper's office and asked for a meeting. She told his secretary that she wanted to discuss a settlement in one of her cases. This was not completely true, but it was the only way to get into his private office. Judge Harper agreed to meet with her the next afternoon. Christopher was worried about his wife meeting with a corrupt judge alone. "These people are criminals," he said. "They might try to hurt you if they think you are a threat." "I will be careful," Karoline promised. "But I have to try this first. If he agrees to resign and cooperate with the authorities, it will be better for everyone." Danny Rodriguez also thought the meeting was dangerous. "Judge Harper has too much to lose," he said. "Men like him do not give up without a fight. He will probably try to threaten you or bribe you." Let him try, Karoline said. I am not afraid of him anymore. The day of the meeting, Karoline dressed in her best black suit. She wanted to look professional and confident. She put all the evidence into a thick folder: bank records, phone recordings, photographs, and witness statements. Everything she needed to prove Judge Harper was a criminal. Christopher drove her to the courthouse. I will wait in the parking lot, he said. If you do not come out in 1 hour, I am calling the police. I will be fine, Karoline said, but she was nervous. She had never confronted a corrupt judge before. She did not know how he would react. Danny was already at the courthouse, sitting in the lobby reading a newspaper. He was there to watch and make sure nothing bad happened to Karoline. If Judge Harper tried anything dangerous, Danny would be ready to help. Karoline took the elevator to the 5th floor where Judge Harper's office was located. The hallway was quiet and empty. Most of the other judges had gone home for the day. Judge Harper's secretary had also left, so his office area was dark except for the light coming from under his door. Karoline knocked on the door. Come in, Judge Harper called out. She opened the door and stepped into his office. It was a big room with expensive furniture and fancy decorations. Judge Harper sat behind a huge wooden desk that probably cost more than most people made in a year. On the walls were pictures of him with important politicians and business leaders. Judge Harper looked up from his papers and smiled. It was the same mean smile he had given her in the courtroom weeks ago. Ms. Leavitt, he said. What? A surprise. I thought you might want to discuss a settlement. Are you finally ready to be reasonable? Karoline sat down in the chair across from his desk. She placed the thick folder in front of her but did not open it yet. Judge Harper, she said calmly, I am here to discuss something much more important than a settlement. Oh, really? Judge Harper leaned back in his chair. And what might that be? Your criminal activities? Karoline said. Judge Harper's smile disappeared. His face became hard and cold. I beg your pardon? Karoline opened the folder and took out the first set of bank records. She placed them on his desk so he could see them clearly. These show payments of $25,000 every month for 3 years. Money that came from Preston Development Corporation through fake companies. Judge Harper glanced at the papers but tried to look unconcerned. I have no idea what you are talking about. Those are legitimate investment returns. Karoline, put more papers on the desk. These are the incorporation papers for Atlantic Investment Group and Harbor Consulting Services. Both companies were created by your brother-in-law, Kevin Murphy. Both companies have no employees, no office, and no business activities. They exist only to pay you bribes. Now Judge Harper's face was getting red. He picked up the papers and looked at them more carefully. His hands were shaking slightly. Where did you get these documents? They are public records, Karoline said. Anyone can look them up if they know where to look. She put more evidence on the desk. Phone recordings, photographs, witness statements. With each new piece of evidence, Judge Harper looked more worried and more angry. You have been taking bribes from Preston Development for 3 years, Karoline continued. In exchange, you have ruled against hundreds of innocent families. You have helped a corrupt company steal people's homes and destroy their lives. Judge Harper stood up suddenly. His face was now very red and he was breathing hard. You have no right to investigate me, he shouted. I am a judge. You are nobody. You are just some lawyer who married a rich man. I am the lawyer who is going to bring you down, Karoline said calmly. She was not afraid of his shouting. She had expected him to get angry. Judge Harper walked around his desk and stood over her. He was trying to intimidate her with his size and his position of power. You think you are so smart, he said, but you have no idea who you are dealing with. I have friends in high places. I can destroy your career with one phone call. Karoline remained seated and calm. Your friends cannot help you when the FBI arrests you for taking bribes. The FBI? Judge Harper's voice cracked. You have not gone to the FBI? Not yet, Karoline said. But I will. Unless you do the right thing. She pulled out a piece of paper and placed it on top of all the other evidence. It was a resignation. letter she had written for him. "You have two choices," she said. "You can sign this resignation letter and agree to cooperate with the authorities, tell them everything about your crimes, and help them arrest the other people involved. If you do this, you might get a shorter prison sentence." Judge Harper grabbed the resignation letter and read it quickly. "You must be crazy if you think I will sign this. Your other choice," Karoline continued, "is that I hold a press conference tomorrow morning. I will give copies of all this evidence to every newspaper and television station in the city. I will also send it to the FBI, the State Attorney General, and the Judicial Conduct Board. By tomorrow night, everyone in America will know that Judge William Harper is a corrupt criminal." Judge Harper crumpled up the resignation letter and threw it at her. "You cannot prove any of this. You got this evidence illegally. I will have you arrested for harassment and blackmail." Karoline picked up the crumpled paper and smoothed it out. "Everything I have was obtained legally through public records and legitimate investigation. I have done nothing wrong. But you have committed bribery, money laundering, and conspiracy. Those are federal crimes that carry long prison sentences." Judge Harper began pacing around his office like a caged animal. He was realizing that his comfortable life of corruption was about to end. All his expensive houses, his luxury cars, his powerful friends. None of it could save him now. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. "I want you to resign immediately," Karoline said. "I want you to cooperate with the authorities and tell them everything about Preston Development and Kevin Murphy and Nancy Foster. I want you to help undo the damage you have caused to all those families. And if I do that, you will not go to the press?" "I will still go to the FBI," Karoline said. "Your crimes are too serious to ignore. But if you cooperate, I will tell them that you tried to do the right thing at the end." Judge Harper sat down heavily in his chair. He looked like an old man who had just realized his whole world was falling apart. "You do not understand," he said quietly. "These people are dangerous. If I cooperate with the authorities, they might try to hurt me or my family. Then you should have thought about that before you started taking their money," Karoline said. She stood up and gathered her evidence back into the folder. "You have until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to decide. After that, I am going public with everything." As she walked toward the door, Judge Harper called out to her, "Wait. You said I mocked you for marrying a rich man, but you are about to destroy my life over some poor people you do not even know. Why do you care so much about them?" Karoline turned around and looked at him. "Because someone has to care. Because right and wrong still matter. Because the same people you called poor and worthless are human beings who deserve justice." She paused at the door. "The woman you called a trophy wife is about to show you what real strength looks like." Karoline left the office and walked quickly to the elevator. Her heart was beating fast, but she felt proud of what she had done. She had looked a corrupt judge in the eye and told him his time was up. When she got to the parking lot, Christopher was waiting for her. "How did it go?" he asked. "He is going to fight," Karoline said, "but it does not matter. Tomorrow, everyone will know the truth about Judge William Harper." As they drove home, neither of them noticed the black car that followed them for several blocks before turning away. Karoline woke up early the next morning. She had barely slept all night thinking about what would happen today. By 9 o'clock, she would know if Judge Harper had decided to resign or if she would have to expose him publicly. Either way, his corrupt empire was about to fall. At 7:30, her phone rang. It was Danny Rodriguez calling with urgent news. "Karoline, Judge Harper submitted his resignation letter to the court administration this morning," Danny said. "But something strange is happening. There are FBI agents at the courthouse right now." "FBI agents?" Karoline was confused. "I have not contacted them yet." "Someone else must have called them," Danny said. "Maybe Judge Harper thought he could make a deal with them before you went public. But it does not matter. They are investigating him now." Karoline quickly got dressed and drove to the courthouse. When she arrived, she saw FBI cars parked outside and agents carrying boxes of evidence out of the building. News reporters were already there, filming everything and asking questions. Agent Patricia Bell was leading the investigation. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and serious eyes. She had been with the FBI for 15 years and specialized in corruption cases. When she saw Karoline approaching, she walked over to meet her. "Are you Karoline Leavitt?" Agent Bell asked. "Yes," Karoline replied. "How do you know who I am?" "We received an anonymous tip about judicial corruption. The caller mentioned your name and said you had evidence. We would like to speak with you." Karoline realized that someone else had called the FBI, but she did not care who it was. What mattered was that the authorities were finally involved. "I have been investigating Judge Harper for weeks," Karoline said. "I have evidence that he has been taking bribes from Preston Development Corporation." Agent Bell's eyes became very interested. "We would like to see that evidence. Can you come to our office this afternoon?" "Of course," Karoline said. "But I should tell you, Judge Harper is not the only one involved. There are several other people who helped him." By noon, the story was on every news channel in the city. "Federal agents raid courthouse in corruption investigation," the reporter said. "Judge William Harper resigns amid bribery allegations." Christopher called Karoline while she was driving to the FBI office. "I am watching the news," he said. "You did it. You actually brought down a corrupt judge." "It is not over yet," Karoline said. "Now I have to help the FBI build their case." At the FBI office, Karoline spent 4 hours showing Agent Bell all the evidence she and Danny had collected. The bank records, phone recordings, photographs, and witness statements. Agent Bell was impressed by how thorough their investigation had been. "This is excellent work," Agent Bell said. "You have made our job much easier. We already have search warrants for Judge Harper's properties and bank accounts. We are also going after Preston Development Corporation and the other people involved." "What about all the families who lost their homes?" Karoline asked. "Can anything be done to help them? If we can prove that their court cases were decided through bribery, those decisions can be overturned," Agent Bell explained. "The families might be able to get their homes back or receive compensation for their losses." That evening, the FBI arrested Judge Harper at his expensive home. They also arrested Richard Stone, the head of Preston Development Corporation. Kevin Murphy, Judge Harper's brother-in-law, was arrested at his accounting office. Nancy Foster, the court clerk, was arrested at the courthouse where she had sold secrets for years. The arrests were shown on television news. Karoline watched from her living room as Judge Harper was led away in handcuffs. The man who had mocked her for marrying a rich man was now facing years in federal prison. "How do you feel?" Christopher asked his wife. "Relieved," Karoline said, "and proud. We stopped them from hurting more families." Over the next few weeks, more details about the corruption came out. The FBI investigation revealed that Judge Harper had taken over $1 million in bribes over 3 years. Preston Development had illegally forced out more than 400 families from their homes. Kevin Murphy had helped launder money for other criminal organizations too. The story became national news. Karoline was invited to appear on television shows to talk about how she exposed the corruption. Reporters called her the brave lawyer who took on a corrupt judge and won. But Karoline was most happy about the families who got justice. Maria Santos, her original client, was allowed to move back into her apartment. The court decision that forced her out was overturned because it was based on bribery. Maria called Karoline with tears of joy. "Thank you for not giving up," she said. "My children and I have our home back because you were brave enough to fight." Many other families also got their homes back or received money to compensate for their losses. James Wilson, the deaf old man who had been falsely accused of being too noisy, was able to move back to his apartment of 20 years. "I never thought I would see justice," James told Karoline. "I thought rich people always won and poor people always lost. You proved that wrong." The criminal trials took several months. Judge Harper was found guilty of bribery, money laundering, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Richard Stone received 15 years for running the corruption scheme. Kevin Murphy got 8 years for money laundering. Nancy Foster received 5 years for selling court secrets. Preston Development Corporation had to pay $50 million in fines and compensation to the families they had cheated. The company went out of business because they could not afford The penalties. Karoline testified before a congressional committee in Washington about judicial corruption. She spoke to senators and representatives about the need for better oversight of judges and stronger penalties for corruption. This case shows that corruption can happen anywhere, she told the committee. We need better systems to catch corrupt judges before they can hurt innocent people. Her testimony helped lead to new laws requiring more financial disclosure from judges and creating independent committees to investigate judicial misconduct. The American Bar Association gave Karoline an award for courage in exposing corruption. At the ceremony, she spoke about the importance of standing up for what is right. I did not do this for recognition, she said. I did it because hundreds of families were being hurt by corruption. Every lawyer has a duty to fight for justice, even when it is difficult or dangerous. Karoline's law practice grew after the case. Many people wanted to hire the lawyer who had taken down a corrupt judge, but she continued to focus on helping families with housing problems and fighting for people who could not afford expensive lawyers. She and Christopher started a foundation to provide free legal services to low-income families facing eviction. They called it the Justice for All Foundation. The foundation helped hundreds of families every year. Danny Rodriguez became the foundation's chief investigator. He used his skills to help expose other cases of corruption and fraud that hurt poor families. 6 months after Judge Harper's arrest, Karoline found herself back in the same courtroom where her journey had started. She was representing another family facing eviction. But this time, the judge was honest and fair. The family won their case based on the evidence and the law. As Karoline packed her papers after the victory, she thought about how much had changed. The courtroom that had once been a place of corruption and injustice was now working the way it was supposed to work. She was wearing the same navy blue suit that Judge Harper had mocked months ago, but now it represented something different. It represented the victory of an honest lawyer over a corrupt system. It represented justice for families who had almost given up hope. Maria Santos came up to Karoline after the hearing. She was there to watch because she wanted to see justice happen in the same courtroom where she had once been cheated. You know what the best part is? Maria said to Karoline. What? Karoline asked. Judge Harper thought you were just a rich man's wife who was playing at being a lawyer. But you showed him that being smart and brave has nothing to do with money. You showed him that real power comes from doing what is right. Karoline smiled as she left the courthouse. The woman who had been called a trophy wife had become a champion for justice. She had proven that corruption could be defeated when good. People refused to stay silent. Outside the courthouse, Christopher was waiting for her in their car. Another victory? He asked. Another family gets to keep their home, Karoline said. That is all that matters. As they drove away, Karoline thought about all the families who were now safe in their homes because she had been brave enough to stand up to corruption. Judge Harper had made a mistake when he chose to mock her instead of listening to her evidence. That mistake had cost him his freedom and destroyed his criminal empire. Justice had been served.